What would happen if you started or took your business to $1 million, $2 million, or $5 million in annual revenue? What would that mean to you personally, your family, community, and your network? It can happen. A Million Veteran Millionaires is a mindset engineering Zoom call platform created to rally and gather veteran startups or veteran-owned businesses who want to work together to help each other succeed. We will first focus on changing mindsets that keep you back and go through a process called mindset engineering to take steps to achieving success. We will feature other successful business owners who are leading the way, who are supporting this mission. We are limited to 100 attendees initially. The cost is free to attend. If you would like to know more, please visit amillionveteranmillionaires.com. You deserve to have a successful business, and we want to help you. Change your mindset, change your future.
Hi, welcome to this edition of A Million Veteran Millionaires that was started, I think 7 months ago. And we don't have to be a veteran, as we've always mentioned in the openings, to be a part of this platform. But this all started with the idea of, how do you plan to grow a successful business? And there's many things that you need to consider, in your life. There's your health, your wealth, love, and happiness, right? So, if you're going to be successful, you want to be successful in many areas. And so we're so grateful. I'm thankful that we have an author, a Marine veteran. You're actually the first veteran, Akshay. We have Akshay Nanavati. He's written a book called Fearvana, but he's got an amazing background, amazing trajectory on what he's doing and what he's inspiring others to do to face their fears and overcome them. So welcome, Akshay, for being available for this Zoom chat.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Well, I'm so thankful you're here. When I started this, I patterned it after the Harley Davidson model. When they first started their club, there was only 30 people that showed up, right? And then it grew into a thing, so to speak. I got that from my daughter. She says, the social media part, Generation Z, is when something's a thing, it becomes a phenomenon, right?
Roger that. Yeah.
That's what I'm praying about is, we'll reach those vets that want to grow their business and, have a balanced life and just be successful, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to read your bio. You sent me an awesome bio that recaps everything that you're about. I mean, I'm going to say everything because everything you continue to add to the mix of what you're doing. And we're going to go into a lot of that today, I hope. And
sounds good.
You've got some awesome challenges ahead of you, right?
Yes, sir.
So you overcame a drug addiction, PTSD for fighting in Iraq with the Marines, where one of your jobs was to walk around vehicles and looking for bombs. That's got to be a highly anxious job. You suffer from depression and alcoholism that push you to the brink of suicide. And we know that's a big problem, not just in America, but around the world. Since then, you built a global business. You run ultra marathons, including a 24-hour run and 50-mile run around the cul-de-sac. You spent 10 days in darkness and isolation. That's recent. And I wanted to talk more about that. I read a little bit of your article that you published online. You climbed mountains in the Himalayas. You skied 350 miles across the world's second largest ice cap. And you became one of 26 people to ski up a remote glacier in Antarctica, where you got frostbite and lost one of your fingers. That's crazy. Yeah, gnarly. Wow. Man, I saw your post on that, by the way, and sorry that happened to you.
Oh, all good. No complaints.
He's a now sponsored athlete despite 4 biological defects, including a blood disorder that 2 doctors told him would kill him in boot camp. Combining your life experience with research in the science and spirituality, you wrote a book called Fearvana, which I've read. It's an amazing book and recommend it to others about which the Dalai Lama said Fearvana inspires us to look beyond our own agonizing experiences and find the positive side of our life. All the profits from the books are going towards charity. Akshay is now on a mission to help our human family fall in love with fear, stress, and anxiety, pain, and suffering in order to create a life of greater meaning, joy, and fulfillment. He is currently training for a solo 110-day, 1,700-mile, never-before accomplished crossing of Antarctica. Wow. Sorry, I mangled that up a little bit, but
all good, brother.
it is really a nice synopsis of the things that you're working on. And no one wants. It seems like in this day and age, people don't want to suffer. They don't want to face their fears. But you're saying we should.
Absolutely. If you don't seek out a meaningful suffering, you're going to suffer anyway. We all suffer in life, and if you don't embrace it and actually seek it out, Like I always like to say, if you don't seek out a worthy struggle, struggle will find you anyway. And the suffering that finds you if you don't embrace it is far worse than actually seeking it out in whatever your worthy struggle is. It doesn't have to be running ultra marathon, skiing across Antarctica. It could be raising a child, playing the guitar, playing basketball. Whatever your path is, anything worthwhile will be hard. And the key is falling in love with that suffering. Because once you do, our negative relationship to suffering is the single greatest barrier in the human condition. It's a single greatest problem, because ultimately, what do we seek, right? Like, why do we do anything we do? To be happy, to be fulfilled, inner peace, bliss, whatever words you want to use. And if you view suffering as negative, suffering becomes a barrier to that thing we ultimately seek. But if you fall in love with it, suffering becomes a part of the adventure. You can find bliss even in suffering. I mean, the things I do, I'm constantly fucking miserable, but I embrace that and I absolutely treasure the experience of that suffering. And once you, as I like to say, suffer well, once you suffer well, you will be able to find bliss, whether life punches you in the face or whether you're seeking out a worthy challenge. You'll be able to fall in love with the adventure no matter what life throws your way. It's the secret to, easier said than done, I get that, but it is the key to living a more blissful and peaceful life.
Well, that's why I was reading your book. It made sense, right? Because fear protects us, it keeps us alive. But we've heard in the past that fear is false evidence appearing real. And so your approach, it seems to me, is that you are analytical, because you start to analyze what's causing the fear. You go out and seek information.
Yeah.
And experts, I think there's some experts you've reached out to, for rock climbing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to overcome those fears as you're facing them, right? Is that kind of what you're saying in your book?
Absolutely. Like the whole essence of Fearvana is to combat the demonization of fear. Like nobody hears the word fear and thinks of it as positive. That's a problem. Like fear is never the problem. It's the fear of fear. That's why I vehemently disagree with that quote from, I believe it was Roosevelt, who said the only thing to fear is fear itself. That is inaccurate. Like that's a huge flaw. The problem is fearing fear. The key is to, once you start embracing it, accepting that it's there, and then you can release the judgment you have for yourself around your fear. Because what happens is, and I've worked with, I do a lot of coaching for people to help them navigate their pain and use it to create more health, wealth, and relationships. And the problem is that most people, when they have fear or anxiety, they then judge themselves for having it. Like, I'll give you a very concrete example. I worked with one guy who was traveling to Iceland on his own for a vacation, very chill vacation, but it was first time he was going out on his own, and he was really scared. And he was beating himself up for feeling fear. Like he was seeing all the crazy shit I do and was like, why am I scared? I'm just going to Iceland on my own. But he had never been on a solo vacation, so it's normal to feel fear. The problem was not the fear. The problem was his judgment around himself, thinking he's a piece of shit, he's worthless. And that's the fundamental thing. So Fearvana is the idea of it is that fear is not the antithesis of nirvana. Fear is the access point to it. I get scared of fucking everything, man. Like I'm terrified of everything I do. I have a date next week. I'm terrified of going on a date, but I don't care that I'm scared. Like fear doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I love it when it shows up, and I've developed a very positive relationship to it. So the key is helping people like embrace the emotion, accept it, not judge it, not demonize it, and then understand it. Like I'm scared of going to do the things that I do, right? Going to Antarctica. I was scared of writing a book on fear. So I asked myself, what am I scared of? What's the worst case scenario? How do I prepare for that worst case scenario? And this, I encourage people to actually write this down. Like, why am I scared? What's the worst case scenario? How do I prepare for it? I was really terrified of writing a worthless, bad book. So what I did was I studied from great authors, better authors than myself, like Jack Canfield, who wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and studied, how do you write a good book? And as a result, because I was scared of writing a bad book, I wrote a much better book, one that was worthy of being endorsed by the Dalai Lama, among many other amazing people. But it was my fear that drove me to write a better book. My fear drives me to prepare for all the crazy things that I do. When I was going to Greenland, I was terrified. It's a very hostile environment to ski 350 miles there for dragging a 190-pound sled. So I trained for it. Like my fear drove me to train harder. Fear is a very valuable and useful tool to prepare. I always like to say that fear propels you to prepare. But it's on you to use it, to engage it, to navigate it, to harness it, and then use it in your respective arena, whatever your arena is, to channel it into that battle.
Right. So we were talking before the Zoom call that there are people. I mean, after reading your book and all the things you're involved in, I was like, man, I don't know if I'd ever see myself doing the things that you do. Like, we've read stories like Evel Knievel jumping ramps and risking his life, a daredevil bringing. I think we got somebody wants to come in. um, that we read about, right? Those people, those heroes that face their fears and do something remarkable, but it's adding to the conversation, that we need to have with our own circle. I went to the gym this afternoon. I was talking to the manager there. I said, he was talking about, how he's doing well and counting your blessings, that kind of thing. I said, yeah, there's two important days in our life: the day we were born, right? And the day we find out why we were born.
Yeah.
It seems to me that you found your calling, if you will, and that really is why I wanted to have you on here, is because we do have people that are maybe thinking about going to business or thinking about growing their company, and and there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of distractions, even because it can take away from your family, it can take away from your social. There's so many different things that you need to take into account if you're going to grow it or even start a business, right? Then you've got folks that maybe are, not maybe they're later on in life or they're early in life, and there's different demographics and timing and so forth. So, as a veteran yourself, a business owner, what are some of the things that, you can talk about when it comes to starting a business? I saw one photo in your Ink Talk, for example, where you were just in front of your laptop and go, this is what it looks like to start a business or be in a business. Yeah. Right? It seemed like you were in a stressful situation, but
it is stressful. I mean, the key, is first off, stop waiting to be confident. A lot of mistakes out there is just be confident when you do something. If you've never done something before, you can't be confident. Confident is the result of action, not the fuel for it. Courage is the key ingredient. Courage is the most important virtue. And the nature of courage is that there will be fear. You can't have courage without fear. So the first step is just the mindset of I'm not confident in this. I have no idea what I'm doing, and that's cool. It's absolutely terrifying, coming back to what I said earlier of letting go of the judgment, right? And then studying from people who've done it before. Even when I mentioned the book, who can you get as a it is absurd to me how many people will spend unnecessary time, effort, energy, and money, or on useless crap and just wasting energy when you could hire a mentor and accelerate your path to growth. I've hired mentors for everything I do, and it is an accelerant to growth. So study from somebody who's done the thing you want to do. In every arena of my life, I do this. I have business mentors. I have polar exploration mentors. I have ultra running mentors, right? So I'm looking for learning for how other people did it and then studying their path. And look, this is not to say it'll be a magical, smooth ride. It certainly won't be, which is I hate the notion when people say, if you love what you do, it'll never feel like a work in your day or life. That is absolute nonsense. I love what I do, but there are days when it is brutal. It is work. It is suffering. It is hard. It's miserable, but everything worthwhile I've done in my life, including being a Marine, there was at least one day where I absolutely hated it, so everything worthwhile, you get it. There are times in the Marines where it really, really sucks, but that's what makes it worthwhile. So embracing that. And then being very systematic about the problem, right? So in the business, what problem are you solving? Getting clear on who you're solving it for. And then there's only two ways to grow in mind, body, spirit, business, anything. Find the problem, fix the problem, find what's working, and do more of it. And so being very systematic, this is the immediate problem in front of me. And look, to your point, you're not going to know what's happening 100 miles down the road, right? I don't know. I don't know where even my business is. I don't know how to scale a business to 9 figures. I don't know. I've never done that yet. So I'm not there yet. So I'll figure it out once we get there, right? One step at a time. So the key is when it's like the analogy I always like to give is when you're driving through a fog, you can't see what's a mile down the road. You can just see the few hundred feet in front of you. And then as you keep driving, the next part opens up. The next part opens up. And that's the key. So you want to be very systematic. Okay, here's the immediate problem to solve. Got it. I solved this one. In my case, let's say the example of writing a book. First problem is actually writing the book, right? Now marketing the book. And the key thing is there's always problems. A huge mindset shift that I would say is not only do I encourage it, but it's necessary, is not to wait till I get there, wherever the there is. When I get the $1 million, get the house, get the car, get the relationship, then I'll be golden. Then I'll be happy. That's not how it works. There will always be problems. Whether you have $0 or $5 billion, you will have problems. But progress is not the elimination of problems. Progress is the creation of new problems. So enjoy the process of systematically overcoming a problem, because every problem is an opportunity for a new solution. And every solution is an opportunity for a new awakening, a new mental, spiritual. That's how you grow. You grow by doing hard shit, by solving problems. So embrace the fact that there will be problems. Be systematic about solving one at a time. So you're not overwhelmed with the million different things out there. And that's one of the challenges in today's environment is there is a shitload of stuff out there, right? There is an overwhelming amount of confusion. So find 1-2 mentors, focus on them, follow that path and sideline, because you can do multiple things in the business. You can do a million different ways online to grow business, and every one of them could work. There could be seemingly exact contradictory methods, and they both will work. So it's not about like trying to do a million things. Find a few things and go ham into that thing, right? And then be obsessive about the pursuit of mastery at your craft while systematically addressing one problem at a time. And then when you make more money, when you get to the next thing, great, there'll be a new problem. Happiness is not the elimination of problems. Happiness is like the pursuit of actually embracing it and solving it and then falling in love with the process over the payoff. That's a mantra I always use for myself: process over payoff. Embrace the journey. The result is a side effect. Have a goal, have a target, but once you're in the pursuit of it, stay in the pursuit of it, stay in the present process, and the goal will just happen as a side effect of you embracing the process.
Well, one of the things about embracing what you're saying, the process, I think in your book you make mention of taking a 3-second pause to soak it in. Like, you have the present now, right? The past is the past, the present is now, the future may not come, right? So you're in that moment. And what I like about what you posted on, I think when you did the 10-day deprivation, I mean, you put it out there. You say you're going to do it, and that kind of sets a level of commitment, right? A trajectory for where you're headed. So I can't even imagine going through a 10-day sensory deprivation.
Yeah, sitting in 10 days of complete darkness. And
how do you pick these challenges? I guess it's part of it. Like, real quick, Mike Martin has joined us. He's a Navy vet. He's here in Houston.
How you doing, sir?
Very entrepreneurship guy as well. But thank you for being here, Mike. But anyway, go ahead.
As far as how I pick the challenges, it's like going into the darkness. It was 10 days complete sitting in a very dark room, like complete darkness. You can't see your hand in front of you, darkness and isolation. It was to train for this solo expedition across Antarctica. So I'll be spending 110 days completely alone in the most hostile environment on the planet. I will geographically be the most isolated human being on Earth. And so to master solitude, to master presence, to master that relationship with the self, which is ultimately the most important relationship we all have, to master that relationship, I went into a darkness. So I choose at first, when I first got into doing these hard things after joining the Marines, it was very like bouncing around and just embracing every challenge I could find. Like, I used to be terrified of everything, literally terrified of a Ferris wheel, terrified of open water, terrified of heights, terrified of tight spaces. So I systematically started confronting all my fears. I went scuba diving, skydiving, rock climbing, cave diving, caving, all of it. Right. And then as I started doing one thing after the other, I started to find where my bliss was, in the sort of words of Joseph Campbell Collier, bliss. And what I love about polar exploration and polar travel is, as paradoxical as this may sound, it presents the highest level of suffering unlike anything else I've done before, more so than mountain climbing, more so than ultra running. As one polar explorer put it, polar exploration is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time, which has been devised. So, as weird as it may sound, the draw to me is not the suffering in and of itself. It's the thing the suffering gives you. Suffering is an access point to transcendence. It's an access point to God, right? Like, it's the closest. There's a reason why they say there's no atheists in foxholes. Because when do people most connect to God? Is when they're in their darkest, right? That darkness, that suffering, that hell, it taps into something greater in the human spirit and the human soul that you have to unearth within yourself in order to transcend that suffering, in order to move through it. Polar exploration is an experience of extremely heightened in terms of voluntary suffering, right? This is very different than being forced into suffering, like people who are in war zones or survivors or people who are sex trafficked and refugees. That's a different kind of hell. Can't even compare to the horrors that human beings endure. I'm talking about in terms of those of us who have the luxury and the opportunity to seek out suffering. It is by far the most sort of extreme experience of voluntary suffering that I've ever found. And so everything right now is oriented towards training for that. The darkness is oriented towards training for that. And everything is like oriented towards polar exploration, and specifically this experience of Antarctica, because, the greater the suffering, the greater the reward. Or as I always like to say is, you have to battle the dragon to find the treasure. And the bigger the dragon, the more hostile and savage the dragon, the greater the treasure. So I don't go for the suffering in and of itself. It is the means, but not the purpose. The purpose is the transcendence. It's the gold on the other side of that. And it is a profoundly beautiful experience. Like, when you are in Antarctica, when you do these things that I do, like life is amplified to its highest level. I mean, the highs out there are insanely high and the lows are insanely low, but you feel everything that the human condition has to offer at its most amplified level. So you're literally more alive than you can possibly experience. And I mean, isn't that what we all seek, an experience of being alive? So to me, it's an experience, despite the suffering and the hardship, and there is plenty of it. I mean, I lost a finger out there. It's very unforgiving. It is a sense of aliveness, of connection to self, connection to God, connection to earth, connection to the human condition, and transcendence unlike any other.
Well, regarding the cold, when I went through Marine boot camp in San Diego, we spent a couple of weeks out in the mountains or whatnot, but that was the coldest I'd ever been, man. And since then, always had like an aversion to cold, right? But this year, I made a commitment that I was going to get out into the elements more. So I joined a little running club, and there's a group. Awesome. I guess it's a national, international group called F3. I think it's Faith, Fitness, and Fellowship, but it was started by, I think, some Special Forces guys back in 2011. Once they got their capacity, other members wanted to join it. So we'll go start your own group. So that started, how vets are, right? They are, okay, we'll go start another group, so they did that. And there's actually a female version called Females in Action. But it's kind of the same principle. They're out there, rain or shine. And it's kind of a boot camp style, not like CrossFit or whatnot. It's just back to back to back to back exercise. It is grueling. Awesome. Most of these guys are 20, 30, 40-year-olds. I'm 57. Some of the guys are 60. I think they have one or two here in Houston that are in their 70s. But these guys are Spartans,
Love it.
And they said there was a principle behind it that they give you a 10-second break, right? So after you do exercise, it's like boot camp or, working with your platoon or whatever.
Yeah.
But they said that they did a study. And the study is they put these rats in a barrel of water and they let them swim. And they wanted to know how long it would take them to drown. And after about 58 seconds, they drowned. And so they said, So they put another experiment, did the same thing, but they pulled the rats out before the 58 seconds, gave them a 10-second break, put them back in, and they swam for 58 minutes. So as you were talking, my XO, I was stationed in New Orleans, 4th Marine Aircraft Wing, when I was in from 88 to 92, but my XO was a grunt. So he didn't believe in having us be office pose, right? He got us out there exercising, but our runs were down Bourbon Street. But when we were at our limits, he used to say, like, the human body is amazingly resilient. It can take so much. And there's so much more and you proved that. I mean, I think I saw one of your posts where you did a 5-day fast, but you also included
the Marine Corps birthday a couple of weeks ago.
What's that?
I did that for the Marine Corps birthday 2 weeks ago to celebrate the Marine Corps as honor of the Marine Corps birthday. A 5-day fast while averaging approximately 3 hours of exercise per day. It was brutal. It was hard, but we are so much stronger than we think we are.
There's a thing called intermittent fasting. People do that. They do the 18-hour 1 meal a day, but 5 days and then adding the exercise to it. And I saw you at the end of it, man. You were just totally exhausted.
It was a good battle.
I mean, what do you learn from these things? What are some of your takeaways? Like any special moments of epiphanies, that like stand out in the whole spectrum of all the challenges you put yourself through?
I mean, every time you go to war with yourself, you're discovering something new, And every time you do these things, like every time I go into these different challenges, whether it be 10 days in darkness, a 5-day fast, running ultra marathons, you're opening new doors into your own soul. And what you reveal in those doors, you don't always know what's going to come out. Sometimes it can be very dark. Sometimes it can be absolutely beautiful, but whatever comes out, you have to face. And that journey of facing that is incredible. Like when I did the 5-day fast, I think it was on the 3rd day of 2.5 days of no eating. I did a very hard 1 hour high intensity interval training session after like no eating for 2.5 days. And I went into a very dark space where I was thinking about like Viktor Frankl and all the men in the concentration camp who endured the hell they endured, right? Like, and not to say mine is even 0.0001% of what they endured, but the point is I was tapping into their spirit. And I went into a very dark place, but I remember thinking like, all right, imagine you're out there right now and somebody's pointing a gun at your family and the people you love. And they say, if you quit, you're going to kill them, and it's a very, very dark place to get to. I get that. But it was amazing how I was able to go like keep pushing in a very hard, high intensity interval workout that even when I'm on food, it's hard to do. Right. But not for 1 second did I stop in that entire workout. And so you find a new place in the human soul and the human spirit. And it's not just like that. I have it. We all have it, but you need to go into those spaces to tap into it. Like you need fear to know courage. You need struggle to know strength. Pain is just an access point to power, right? In order to tap into that inner greatness, you need an opportunity to find your inner greatness. That opportunity doesn't come in comfort. It comes in the suck. It comes in hardship. It comes in hell. And the closer you are to that hell, the closer you become to actually tapping into God. Like, as a very tangible experience, when I was in the darkness, sitting in a completely dark room, I saw the brightest white light I've ever seen in my entire life. Because they say neurologically, your brain starts to release DMT, which is one of the primary ingredients in ayahuasca. So you see basically kind of like hallucinogenic type experiences. And I saw a bright light that was blinding. I mean, I was literally covering my eyes like this because it was blindingly white. And here I am sitting in an extremely dark room, brightest light I've ever experienced, right? Like, you need darkness to know light. You need pain to really understand pleasure. And when you play on the edges of the human condition, that it amplifies everything. Like, the greater you know hardship, the greater you will know joy. Most people are so scared to delve into hell, and as a result, they stay in this middle ground of numbness, right? But you have to, like, contrast is what gives life its flavor. You can't have a summit without a valley. Otherwise, it's just flat ground. So if you want to experience the highs of life, you have to go into the lows. And I'm very, very blessed. I get to, some of the suffering I haven't chosen. It's been life's thrown my way, and much of it now I have the opportunity to choose my suffering. But by doing so, it makes life more alive. And if that's what you like, you can live your whole life numb, which I think, who was it who said, Henry Thoreau, most men live a life of quiet desperation. And it is true. Most human beings, forget about men, most human beings live a life of quiet desperation. And you want to get out of that quiet desperation? Go to war with yourself, and you'll be in hell. There's nothing I or anybody can say. The whole goal is, sometimes when people hear the things I do, they think I don't suffer, like somehow I'm special. I can't tell you how many times people are like, oh, what about us normal people? As if I'm somehow like special. I am not special. When I go through these things, it's not that I don't suffer. I've just built up an ability to endure it. And that doesn't come overnight. As I said, I used to be scared of a fucking Ferris wheel, let alone the crazy things I now do, right? So you build it up 1 inch at a time. You don't ski across Antarctica overnight. Whatever your thing is, you don't run a 100-miler overnight. You start training, you build some strength, right? So you have to build up that one inch at a time, climb the ladder of risk, climb the ladder of pain. And the greater you keep pushing, the farther you go into that war with yourself, the stronger you become, and the farther you can keep going. And then you'll develop a love for it, because it is profoundly beautiful. That's why I keep doing this shit. It's not that it's easy. I suffer immensely, but who you become on the other side of it, I mean, you can't really describe it. It is the human experience at its finest.
It seems like you have the ability to focus, and then you have an amazing self-talk. Right now I'm reading the Diary of Anne Frank, and a good friend of mine wrote, I guess it's kind of like a pattern series that he's doing called the Lost Diaries of. He's doing one on George Washington, but he did one on Anne Frank. It's called The Lost Diary of Anne Frank. But he went and interviewed a lot of the Holocaust survivors, went to the Holocaust places. And then, of course, that got me curious as to how did these people survive. And there's actually a documentary on Prime right now that was done by the military, and found out there was over 200 or 300 Holocaust locations. Some of them were small, some were big. I think over in Auschwitz, 10,000 people a day were killed. And I remember reading a book by Weissel, I can't remember his first name, but in it, his self-talk was different, because the survivors, I guess, had to make the situation, even though it was terrible, I mean, really beyond horrific, what anyone's ever experienced, but, they just had to believe that they could get through it,
And Search
so
for Meaning.
self-talk.
Right? Yeah.
What's that?
Man's Search for Meaning is one of the greatest books I've ever read. Viktor Frankl's understanding of it. I mean, Viktor Frankl's document of what he endured and what others endured in the concentration camp, and how they found meaning in that suffering. It is profoundly beautiful. Just especially a testament to the human spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, the work details were insane, and there's no rhyme or reason to a lot of the stuff that they had to endure and go through. So, of course, war is hell, and you went through that. So you're, like I said, your self-talk. So what's like your go-to thing that gets you out of the rut, right? Gets you moving. Like, okay, you know what?
Yeah, it's a great. Great question. There's multiple different weapons to access when you're in that war with yourself. And sometimes one weapon will work and another time it won't. So for example, like I mentioned how I got into that very dark space of like tapping into that I don't always go into the darkness. Sometimes there's like a real beauty of like, I'm grateful I get to be here. Or like sometimes I'll just like when I'm out tire dragging, when I did like for my actual birthday to celebrate, I did 10 hours of meditation and 10 hours of tire dragging with a full 34 hours of no food. And at the end of it, like I was just looking at the night sky and just feeling grateful and blessed to be looking at stars, So you tap into gratitude, and sometimes like what I do is I call for more pain, because I recognize, like, this is coming back to falling in love with pain, is that I can only become more powerful when I'm in pain, like that. And sometimes, like many years ago, when I started doing all this stuff, I remember once I was training for an 80-mile run around a 0.2-mile loop, and I remember training for it, and I was like, I hope it's not too bad. And then I was like, if you want it easy, why in the hell would you run 80 miles around a 0.2-mile loop? So what do you like? Why would you want? There's no reason if you're looking for something easy. So now it's like, I don't look for easy. When sometimes if I'm not in enough pain, I will literally, I get into a very crazy space, but I'm like, I want the devil himself to rise out of hell and commit the entirety of his being to the destruction of my soul, because I'm going to look that motherfucker in his eye and bury him in his own blood. So I get into this space that I'm like, bring on as much pain as you could possibly bring on, and I will break you. Nothing's going to tap into me. So I tap into that space. I tap into gratitude. I thank God. I'm tapping into the spirituality of feeling connected with all that is. Like one time when I was tire dragging, I was just in this local park. I dragged these two very, very heavy tires for hours on end as part of my training for Antarctica. I was looking at the pavement and looking at the park, and I was just thinking about the amount of people that came together to build this park, right? Like the amount of, so some guy built that pavement, and that guy was only alive because of his parents. And like, if you think about that, it's like the amount of human souls, like even let's look at the fact that you and me are connected here, right? You read my book, you heard me on some podcast, all the people in your life who have come together to make your life possible, and all the people in my life who've come to my life possible, even people I've never met, like Viktor Frankl. I never met him. The man has touched my soul, right? So when you think about the connection of all of the human condition that comes together, we become a sum that is greater than each individual part, right? And so tapping into the spirituality of like just our connectedness, that can be a very powerful tool. I actually have on my website like a training that like it's like a PDF, a free PDF I give away on, called the 25 Weapons to Navigate the Pain Cave. So there's like a series of different tools, and each one has its own value, depending on what you need. And the only way you get that awareness is by playing with pain, by playing in pain, right? Because look, like I said, you're going to get pain whether you like it or not. Life's going to punch you in the face whether you like it or not. Everybody knows that. We all suffer. So instead of waiting for it, seek it, embrace it, because it teaches you how to deal with it, and the pain cave, like the tools are, sometimes they'll be exact opposites. Like sometimes I go deeper into the pain, other times I distract myself from the pain. So they seem like exact opposites, which in some ways they are, but they both have their place. But the only way you know which one to use when you need it is by experimenting and playing in the place of pain, like playing in that space, and it'll teach you how to navigate pain, whether it's pain you seek out or whether it's pain life inflicts upon you.
Well, we're going to take a question from Mike. If you can unmute yourself, Mike, when you ask a question. But you just reminded me of my first Sergeant Lael. He says, if morale is low, the beatings will begin until morale improves.
I love that mantra from the Marines.
Hey, Mike, do you have a few questions for Akshay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to absorb. I don't know the backstory. So you met him through reading a book?
Yeah, he wrote a book called Fearvana, and he's an entrepreneur and so forth. And, we're talking about mindset. So one thing about Mike here, Akshay, is, he just moved in from California, moved to Houston, and he does a lot of networking. He's a Vietnam era vet. And, I always respect men of his wisdom who are sharing what he experienced. I think he did some work in corporate America, that kind of thing as well, but definitely a connector, and has been following this platform for a little bit. But anyway, any challenges you're going through that you're facing your fears, and maybe need some.
I'm hearing all the different stuff, and being a Vietnam vet, boots on the ground. I was Navy, but I was actually boots on the ground. I was not on board a ship. So first, a lot of people have that. It's very hard for them to comprehend that. But there are three kind of Navy vets for Vietnam. They're blue water, brown water, and then those of us that were boots on the ground. And most of us that were boots on the ground were we were supply guys and or security or maintenance guys for certain kinds of equipment. But even we in the rear area saw shit that happened that, you don't want to experience it. Then you come back. Eventually I get married and my second wife tells me, no, your PTSD is a bunch of bullshit. It's a hoax. That just drove me, I'm still dealing with that one, and it drove us to a divorce. So it's different kinds of pains and fears and being in abusive situations that all of us usually go through something in our lifetime. In our lifetime, we go through something. That just depends on where you happen to experience it. So I like your comments because I put myself in a situation when I was younger where I had to go escape and go live in a basement because that was my only safe haven from a very abusive, stepfather.
Oh my God.
And that puts a whole different spin on your head,
Sure.
And but like you say, you work through what you got to work through. At some point, you have to make a decision. What are you going to do? Are you going to sit here and take this, or are you going to move forward? So, when I was 17, not even out of high school, Andy doesn't know this part. I don't think I ran away from home.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Wow.
I ran away from home because I couldn't be around the abusive, alcoholic bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
And I felt really, really bad because I left 4 half siblings behind.
Oh my God.
And then, I've tried to do things to help them as they've grown older, but they all have their own set of issues that cropped up because of that environment.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So it's I haven't done what you've done, but I guess in my mind there are certain times that I've had to be in that darkness.
Yes, sir.
To cope with what was going on. I didn't escape to like many people do to weed or the drugs or the one time I was pounding it back pretty good. But I barely drink at all now. Now granted, I'm 76 years old and hey, I have 2 drinks and I'm out. So
Sure.
you have to temper and control and do the things you got to do. But like you said, I was writing down a couple of your the statements that progress is
Not
the generation of new problems. And I never looked at it from that standpoint because you're really true. Because if you achieve and get something done, you're just moving to another space, and then something else is going to come up.
Yes, sir.
It's all how you look at it. Like for me, and Andy knows a little bit because he said, I'm 26 months here in Texas. My business that I had in California was shut down by the COVID thing, literally shut down because I need to talk to people and talk to them about what I do, the products that I sell.
Mm-hmm.
I used to sell in corporations and it might take me 2 years to make one sale, multi-million-dollar kinds of sales. And then I moved from that space to selling $10 to $100 items that are quick, make a decision right now. So you got to learn how to sell totally differently because you talk to people in a whole different manner.
Yes, sir.
And then you got to take, it's a question of how many no's can you accumulate before you get the yes. It's all on how you look at it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because if you're looking at only from getting I just keep getting no. Well, what's your batting average? Have you figured it out? That's what I tell people. because I've been well trained in sales over the years, and we all have a batting average. It's just a question: how many yeses are you getting, not how many no's.
Absolutely.
So I like the way you were presenting it, and I think your systematic approach is excellent.
Thank you, sir.
You got to look at things, and Andy's a big reader. I'm a big reader too, and I've got like 20 books on my shelf on the current active reading list.
Talking about, one of the things you and I talked about before the Zoom call is the generational differences, right? So you have the boomer, X generation, millennials, and Gen Z. Gen Z will, as far as veterans are concerned, if they did a 2-year stint, they're a veteran now, because I think the Gen Z are like 19 years old. But have you noticed any patterns in the generations as far as their willingness to face their fears, or any response to your speaking?
So as far as like generation differences between, I think that like the world has gotten more complex. The advancement of technology has changed the world like far faster than it has before. And as a result, like on one hand, I do empathize with it's far more confusing. Psychologists call it the paradox of choice. The more choices you have, the less likely you are to actually make a decision. Not to mention, we have these horrific tools that are just dopamine machines. So, literally a person under 25, their brain isn't fully formed yet. And we have young kids whose brain isn't fully formed yet doing horrific things neurologically for the brain. So on the one hand, it's not even their fault that they're living in this reality that's kind of terrible for human consciousness and the evolution of it. And the statistics speak for themselves. We're seeing mental health get worse in every category, right? Including physical health, of course, as well. So on the one hand, the environment is not very conducive to our well-being and our fulfillment in any sense of the word. And then we live in a world that's constantly seeking the easiest way out. So as people become softer in a more confusing and challenging environment, not designed to create a well-being, inevitably you're going to see more issues, and we're already seeing more issues. So that's, I always like to say, if you seek out easy, your life will be hard. If you seek out hard, your life will be easy. So the key, coming back to it, is, young kids, if you're like, the biggest mistake I also see with parents is not letting your kids suffer. This is the biggest mistake I see with parents we're seeing a lot of this in the world, is that overprotecting their kids, and they suffer more. Like I've seen this happen with so many cousins I know, is that their parents overprotect the shit out of them, and when life punches in the face, which it does, they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, because I had the same conversation with my mother. She's 76, I'm 57, but we were latchkey kids, and if I was interested in judo or the Cub Scouts, I rode my bike 8 miles without food or water. Didn't have,
badass.
Wasn't even thinking about dinner. It's like, it's a miracle that I survived. And then of course my daughter's she's 21, the other one's 19, and the millennial Gen Zers, right? And it was like, we wouldn't let them go down a block, so we did overprotect them, I think. And now you can see that this generation, as I observe it, they're a little more conscientious, or a little bit more nervous, let's say, but they are painfully aware of issues that most people are concerned about, but they're keenly aware to it. So how do we change some of that? I think your principles will help a lot of people, not just folks that are reading your book or whatever, but you have other platforms where you're sharing. You're leading by example, I guess is what I want to say. And I fear for you, or I worry for you.
I'm terrified myself.
I'm part of your team. When you get ready to go across the Antarctica, I'm not going to be there with you, but I'll definitely make a time to pray for you every day. Make sure that you have the will and the tenacity, and of course everything you need to be able to accomplish it. Because when you do that, that's going to be an awesome testimony to everything that you're about. So
thank you.
Again, thank you for being here. It was I had to face my fear to reach out to you. It's like, I read your book, I saw you online. I said, what can he say? No, and no one wants to be told no, right?
That's all he could have said is no. Remember,
so I was using every
what
tool
can
I had.
anybody say if you're asking them a question? No.
Right?
That's the principle of closing a sale. What are they going to say?
I was relying on the Marine Brotherhood and all that as well. But you are the first vet to be a part of this Zoom call,
Honored.
so we have that off the books. The other two were children of vets. Sam Childers, machine gun preacher, his dad was a Marine, and Frank McKinney, who I talked about, with you earlier. His dad was Army Vietnam vet. So anyway, so we have our first veteran today in Akshay Nanavati, author of Fearvana. You go to fearvana.com to learn more about his mission and what he's doing, and follow along and be inspired by what he's doing.
Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you for being a part.
Nice listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
America needs veterans more than ever. As a veteran business owner, you are equipped with a focus, professionalism, and dedication that is rare in the marketplace. We are looking for former military, make it happen business leaders like you to join forces with the marketplace mission called Veterans Business Force National, a division of Network in Action Business Force based in Houston, Texas. We are rallying patriots to work together to grow opportunities for yourself, each other, and our community around the country. We meet once a month via Zoom to share our vision and align with fellow warriors. Together, we are stronger. Google Veterans Business Force National to find us before we find you. Apply to join our mission at networkinaction.com. We are Veterans Business Force National, on mission and locking arms.